We all experience pain, and we all want a simple solution, like a pill. Every week on the news we see the latest miracle cure for pain, but it never becomes a reality. For some people, pain becomes a major problem, but unfortunately the experience for most is that treatments have small effect. So if a pill isn't the solution, then what is? So pain is a major problem. Back pain alone accounts for more disability than any other health condition in the world. And despite enormous effort, enormous expense in the healthcare system, outcomes appear to be getting worse. Why? I think we need to take a step back and look at pain differently. We think of pain through a relatively narrow lens. When we go and see a clinician of any discipline, they may do a couple of tests and then they'll prescribe a treatment that is based on their training and their experience. It might work, it might not. If it doesn't, you may be prescribed another treatment through some kind of trial and error approach. You may go and see another clinician, receive another treatment. Is this really the best way to manage pain? So pain is complex, and I'd like to suggest that we need to look at pain differently. So if you have two different people who have apparently the same condition, they both may experience pain completely differently and respond to treatments completely differently. This diagram shows what experts believe to be all of the factors that might be associated with low back pain. So what you can see is that there are an enormous number of biological, psychological, social and environmental factors and the relationship between them that could influence the pain experience for an individual person. Pain is complex, and pain is going to require a complex solution. And when I look at this graph, what I see is that there is going to be opportunities to individualise treatment, to personally match the treatments to the patient based on all the combination of factors that are relevant for them. So what would it take to make this a reality? So first of all, we're going to need comprehensive assessments that measure multiple things in the real world and preferably over time, because what's relevant for a person today may not be relevant tomorrow. We're going to need intelligent systems that are able to integrate all of that information and make rational decisions about what treatments are the most appropriate for that person at that time. We're going to need an array of treatments that can be offered that depend on the specific needs of the individual person, and we need to be able to understand the predicted response to those treatments for that person. We're going to need to be able to monitor, adapt and progress treatments to match the changing needs of people over time. So where are we at making this a reality? Well, advances in technology is making it possible for us to be able to measure multiple factors in the real world continuously. For example, wearable sensors. You all have wearable sensors in your pocket, so your smartphone, or on your wrist, activity monitor, monitoring your physical activation levels. So these types of sensors enable us to measure multiple different factors in the real world over time, and that allows us to understand what might be relevant for an individual person's pain. So these types of technologies are already making new discoveries. For example, the relationship between sleep and pain. We used to think that a person would have pain and that would interfere with their sleep. Now we know the opposite occurs as well. If a person has a poor night's sleep, they're more likely to experience a flare of their pain in the subsequent days. And it's not just how many hours you spend in bed, it's the quality of your sleep. These types of technologies are also allowing us to understand more about the interaction between different factors. For instance, some people have pain that is associated with an elevated systemic immune response, so a whole body immune response. And what we now know is that if that's combined with depression, someone is more likely to have a poor outcome. But each of those factors are low, you're less likely to have a bad outcome. So it's the interaction between them that appears important. So technology is helping. Omics is another major field that is beginning to help us understand the individual differences in the way people experience pain. So omics is about your DNA, so how you are programmed to react and respond to to your life. So genomics is the study of DNA. So that's studying the genetic code of what could happen. Transcriptomics is the study of the messages or the instructions that your DNA sends out to actually enact those commands. Proteomics is the measurement of the proteins that are making it happen. And then metabolomics is the investigation of what actually happened. And by understanding that for an individual person, we can begin to understand and predict the individual differences in a person's response to pain. We also now know that those omics are not fixed from birth, and they can be changed through environment and through exposure to different variables. So what we know is that these are things that are relevant for determining a person's pain experience and their response to individual treatments. What this is going to generate is an enormous amount of data, and we're going to need assistance in connecting those dots. And advances in artificial intelligence are making that possible. In terms of treatments, we're getting better understanding of how to match treatments to patients. For example, exercise is not all the same. Some people respond best to exercise that simply encourages them to become active. Others respond to exercise that changes the way that they move when they're active. One of the good things to come out of COVID is that it's put pressure on us to be able to find ways to provide management from a distance, to monitor people, to adapt and progress programs, to provide support for self-management at a distance without people having to come into the clinic. There's going to be challenges to overcome. There's the expense. There's the potential inconvenience of wearing sensors. There's the potential changes to our healthcare system to make it possible. There's also going to be research that we need to do to fill in the gaps. So we're not there yet. We're going to need to undertake substantial more research to be able to make sure that we can precisely match treatments to the individual. But where does that leave me now? My first piece of advice is to suggest don't fall for the fad. The second piece of advice is go to reputable resources to find evidence for what treatments do work and whom they might work for, and discuss that with your healthcare provider. Hopefully, in the very near future, we'll be able to provide more directed guidance to what treatments would work best for you at that time.